Okay, friends. So today we have Priyanka with us. And friends, you won't believe it. She is holding 10 offer letters. Friends, 10. TCS, HCL, Infosys, Airtel Bank, Devon, Royal Cyber, DXC, Maven Wave, Atos, and Adidas. Oh God, I have to take a break now. I have to drink the water. So great, Priyanka, and I was really thrilled and excited, to have you on our channel, on our show today, because yeah, and I was so proud, when you have pinged me that okay, you have cracked 7, and then by the time we are shooting this is already 10. I don't know, by the time you will join some other company, it will increase. So that's really phenomenal thing, Priyanka, and we all are eager to know how you have cracked all these interviews, and obviously we will have that kind of mock session where we are going to go through with all these questions. So friends, this session is definitely going to be, I don't know, maybe 2 part or 3 part, because we have more than 50 questions, friends, to cover. So I'm sure we will not going to cover in one session. So now, Priyanka, I'm just zipping up and over to you. Why don't you tell us about yourself, your journey, how you cracked 10 interviews, and then we will go to our Q&A session.
Sure, Sunil. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. And behind my success of cracking so much of interviews, I think I give a lot of credit to your channel, Career Talk, because that's the place from where I learned and I understand perspective of many people who have shared their views about how they are working in their real life as a Scrum Master. And that really gave me a good experience of how the industry works in various organizations, how people work in their Scrum Master role. And that really helped me. So I think I will give 100% credit to your channel. For my experience, like my professional journey, I would like to say that I started my career in 2010 as a software development specialist. I was into traditional waterfall way of working as a QA professional, and I worked in manual testing for a good number of years. And from there on, I got an experience like within the organization who was transforming from waterfall to agile way of working. I got an opportunity to work as a Scrum Master. And from there on, my journey in the agile space started. I started to work as an acting Scrum Master in one of the teams who was just starting to work in a Scrum framework. And yeah, from there on, I started to learn the framework, what is all into it. And after being working there for some time, I realized that this is the time to change. And that's where I started to prepare for more about the framework. And that's when I used many options like your YouTube channel. Apart from that, going through the Scrum guide to refresh my knowledge about it, to go to the Agile Manifesto, and also going through many blogs. And from there, I gained that knowledge and implemented it. And behind that success, I would say there is a lot of hard work. I have given around 40 plus interviews. Because I have faced a lot of rejections before I started to get into the real world of, getting those offers. So yeah, behind success, in front of this success, there is a lot of hard work. And I think if one is getting rejected at any place, he should not feel discouraged or demotivated, rather keep trying. And that's the best way to get a success or at a good place.
Absolutely. People only think the success part, then they forget how much hard work a person has put it in that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Priyanka, for that your introduction. Okay, so if you allow, shall we start with our Q&A now?
Yes.
Okay. So now this one is with respect to your Scrum Master experience, right? So why don't you tell us about your role and responsibility as a Scrum Master?
Sure. So in my current role as a Scrum Master, my roles and responsibilities include facilitating all the Scrum ceremonies that are in the Scrum framework. So I am facilitating Scrum ceremonies, and I am looking at 2 Scrum teams with one of which is based out of India, and there are 10 team members, including the Scrum Master and Product Owner. The other one is based out of India and US. So that's a mix or a global team where again, I facilitate those ceremonies. I also work on removing the blockers or impediments that team is facing. Apart from that, I am also held responsible for sharing certain metrics with the leadership, like velocity, commitment reliability, capacity, effort estimation, and product backlog health, and quality metrics. So yeah, these are some of the ones that I share with the management. Along with that, there is a Scrum committee in the organization, which I'm a part of, similar to Center of Excellence, where various Scrum Masters meet together and talk about how their Scrum teams are performing, how we can make them more self-organizing and self-sufficient by sharing ideas with each other. Yeah, I think these are some of my basic responsibilities in my day-to-day life. Yep.
Okay, Priyanka, thank you for that. Okay, so what do you think is your greatest strength as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, I think my greatest strength as a Scrum Master is like reliance and empathy with my team. I have built such a connection and rapport with my team that they can rely on me. They can share whatever challenges they are facing in their day-to-day life. And I have ensured them that I am there to listen to them, to protect them. So they can come up and talk to me. And for that, I have set up one-on-ones for with each of my team members. So that I can understand their perspective. What is if they are facing any challenges, what is their concern behind that, or I can connect with them emotionally. I think that is something really helping me in managing my team, where they are able to confide in me and they can share their problems, and basis that I'm able to guide and help them in the role.
True. Thanks, Priyanka, for that. Okay. Now this one is most asked question, like why we hire you? We are already interviewing 10 more candidates, right? So why we should hire you, Priyanka?
I think the answer goes in the same lines that we have just talked about in the previous question, that I have been able to connect in my current role. I have been able to manage my team very well as a Scrum Master. Also, I've been able to help organization in terms of like I always keep looking on forums where I can share my knowledge about the framework with other teams who are still following traditional waterfall model, so that I can tell them the advantages or benefits of using the Scrum framework, how we can increase that transparency, and by inspecting and adapting the things, we can improve our business value. So I always look for such kind of forums, and with the help of which I am able to help the organization transform many teams from waterfall to agile way of working. So I think that's one of the achievement, and that I think I will be able to use that skill in the new organization that I'm going to. So yeah, I think that's my forte, and based on that, I think it's a good way to call that I can be hired.
Okay, thanks, Priyanka, for that. Okay, so as you mentioned about a lot of challenges and you might have faced, right, as a Scrum Master. So why don't you share some of the challenges and what you have done to resolve those issues or challenges which you have faced?
So as a Scrum Master, my biggest challenge, the biggest challenge for me is the mindset. Uh, it's really hard to convince people at times that why we want to change from waterfall to agile, and there is a Scrum Master coming and saying, no, the way you are working now, we want to change that, and now we want to have work with more transparency, and we have to inspect and adapt at every development phase, and you have to break down your work into smaller pieces. So I can share an example that when I joined my current organization, it was into a transformation phase, and at that time, I just tell my team that Scrum is just a new way of working. This is a way where we are empowering the team. Now they can decide the work by themselves by estimating and capacity planning. We will be able to make our work more transparent with the help of artifacts that we have in the Scrum, like product backlog, sprint backlog, and the increment. We will be able to review our work in the form of reviews and retrospectives, and the client will be able to give feedback. So we will be able to resolve the changes and risk well in advance. So this is just another way of working, and slowly when my team is able to understand the benefits, they were able to, work in the framework with a happy mindset.
Thanks a lot, Priyanka, for that. Okay. So let's assume that you have assigned to a team, and then you have product owner who just came into your team, and he's not able to understand this role completely. So as a Scrum Master, how you're going to help your product owner?
So if a Scrum Master who is coming as a new team member in the team, as a Scrum Master, my responsibility would be to coach him, to guide him, to understand that the purpose of this role is to generate business value, is to be accountable for the product backlog. He is the one who can get those requirements from the client. And with the help of team, we can have these user stories refined, where we can talk about each of these user stories. And if there are any dependencies or risks involved in that, we can resolve that before taking that into our sprint backlog. We will have to define DOR and DOD for each user story, and we can create good user stories with the help of invest criteria. So these are some of the things that I would explain to my product owner, so that he can understand the framework. And when we are actually working into the product backlog, we are grooming the user stories. When we are refining it, we are able to slice it correctly. And then the team is also on the same page. They are able to understand each of those functionality, and we are able to reach to a sprint goal and generate business value out of those user stories.
Great, Priyanka. Thank you for that. Okay. And what about, let's say, if your product owner is a little bit pushy, maybe he or she is asking the team to deliver a user story in between the sprint. So in that scenario, what you are going to do as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, and that's a very common scenario. As a Scrum Master, I would coach my product owner that taking new user stories in an ongoing sprint should be an exception, and it should not be a habit. But if something is coming as a high priority, which is from the business requirement that it's a high priority, then being agile, we will be able to incorporate it at some times. And again, we will have to loop in our developers, because they are the people who will actually be working on those user stories. And we would need some time to estimate the user story and decide if we have the capacity in the current sprint to take up that user story. So I think there generally comes up two scenarios in this case. One is that if we are taking the user story, we will remove the equivalent story points from our existing sprint, and then we will be able to deliver it. But if we are in such a stage in the sprint that we will not be able to take back some stories from the sprint backlog back to the product backlog, then in that case, I'll ask my product owner to get me some additional resources so that we can get this work done. So I think these are the two possible options that we can do if there is an urgent high priority item coming up within the sprint. But yeah, that should be an exception and not a regular thing.
Definitely, sure. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about retrospective. So can you just share some different techniques or different ways by which you have done retrospective as a Scrum Master so far?
Sure, Sunand. So in my experience as a Scrum Master, I have used multiple retrospective techniques, because using a same one every time doesn't work, and it doesn't keep the team engaging every time. So the most common techniques or the retrospective methods that I have used is sailboat, which is the most popular again, where we talk about the anchors, the winds, or the islands that we have into our sprint that we have just passed. We also use MAD, SAD, and GLAD technique, where team differentiates about what are the things that make them mad or what made them sad, or versus what is it that they felt happy about. Another technique that I've used is start doing, stop doing, and continue doing. So is there something that we can start doing into our team, maybe a new process or new tool that we want to add in, or stop doing something which is not working? Or maybe an example can be if we are increasing our ceremonies time from the time box time. So this is something we need to stop doing in future sprints and continue doing something which is really working fine and we should continue to. So that's another one. Apart from that, there is a 4L technique that we use, which talks about liked, lagged, learned, and longed for. So the team can talk about these things. And one of the ones that really worked in my team, which I used to do before we were into this pandemic situation and we used to work from office, is I used to have when we are having this meeting in a boardroom or we are sitting with each other. So write down your concerns or anything that you want to talk about the improvements on a piece of paper without mentioning the name. So if the team is not feeling open up about sharing something when the entire team is available, so in that case they can write it on a chit, and then within the team we will open up all those chits, and then in this way everybody, if it's about individuals, they'll be able to get the feedback without feeling offended with any other person, and within which we were able to identify some areas which we can work upon into our future sprints. So I think these are some of the ones that I commonly use in my retrospectives.
Great. The last one is good one.
Yeah.
Rest, guys, you can see our channel. We have already created the demo for that. If you have not seen that. Okay. Great, Priyanka. Okay. So as a Scrum Master, what do you think are your achievements so far, apart from whatever you are doing, apart from your day-to-day work? Do you think if you want to share some of your top achievements as a Scrum Master?
Sure. So some of the top achievements I would mention is that working into a global team where the developers and the product owner is based out of US and the QAs and Scrum Master is based out of India, it's sometimes difficult to maintain that collaboration among the teams because we have only a few hours of overlap time when we are working as a team. And when the day falls on any of the events day, so if it's a sprint planning or a review or retrospective happening, the day is falling on that day, then in that situation, being a Scrum Master, you have to maintain that collaboration in the team. You have to work as a cohesive team so that we are able to deliver business value and we are not spilling over our user stories every sprint. So I think this is something I've been able to manage very well in my team, and we are judging it with the help of some of the metrics that we are using. That commitment reliability trend is looking good, and the defect leakage metric is looking good. So the quality is good as well as the commitment and estimation is also fine. So this I would say as one of the achievements. Apart from that, like I also mentioned that I'm a part of Scrum committee. So in that, I have been able to share my ideas that how I am managing my team. And at the same time, I am also listening to them, getting their ideas and implementing that team. So with the help of that forum, we are able to achieve a lot into our teams. We are able to add a lot of new ideas into our teams, which is like a way of helping each other. We are able to make our team more collaborative, more cooperative, and they feel motivated at the same time. So yeah, this is another achievement. One more thing is that I already mentioned that I keep looking on forums where I can share my knowledge about the framework, and I've been able to help transform many teams from waterfall to agile. So this in a way help the teams and the organization both.
And one more fourth achievement you forget. Now you are a part of Career Stock. Like Kapil Sharma show, right? Now, how you feel to be part of Career Stock, right? So this is your fourth achievement. Okay, jokes apart, friends. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so let's talk about a scenario where, as you mentioned, that you are a part of Scrum committee, right?
Yep.
Agile way of working, maybe the different practices, maybe. So what if the scenario when some of your other colleagues come to you and they're asking about SAFe or some other kind of framework, for example, Spotify or any other thing, and let's say you are not have enough knowledge about that particular framework, you only know about Scrum, right? So how the conversation will flow in that kind of scenarios?
Yep. So I think if I am in a group where people are talking about other frameworks, other agile frameworks, which I do not have knowledge about, then I would like to be an active listener in such a scenario. I would listen to the conversation, understand their viewpoints about the other frameworks, and I would try to differentiate it with Scrum because that is something I know. So I would try to understand how it is different from Scrum, and what is it that we can adopt in our way of working from these other frameworks. And apart from that, I think once the discussion is over, once the meeting is over, I would like to go back to the people. I would like to interact with them so that I can learn more about those frameworks, and how I can use them, and also going through the documents, the videos from which I can gain more knowledge about those frameworks. That would be my approach, so that in future, if I come across such situation, at least I have an idea of that, even if I don't have a practical experience.
Okay, thanks for sharing your honest answer. Okay, so you talked about business value, you talked about matrices. So would you like to share some of the matrices which talked about business value?
Yes, some of the metrics are the most common metrics or thing that I would say would tell us the business value is the working software. So what is in front of the client and the end user is using is basically telling us how much value we have got out of this product or a project. Apart from that, some other metrics like quality metrics will tell us that how our project is looking, how many defects we have into the system, and are we able to improve that sprint by sprint. And that's another thing that I think would tell us that how valuable our product is or how the quality of our product is.
Okay, you have any way to calculate that working software is working fine, or if you have seen something in the past, like how you measure that, okay, now your customer is happy or this particular software, as you mentioned, right, is perfectly working fine, something you
Yeah,
can think of?
so when we are having those review meetings, if we see that there is no feedback coming from the customer now or the stakeholders, or there is very minimal feedback, and they are appreciating the work that we are doing, and end users are also happy or satisfied with the functionality, there is no much feedback coming from the end user, I think that's a way to determine. We do not have a particular metrics for that, but we run some surveys at times, and getting the user surveys will tell us that how the product is going and are they happy with the delivery that we are giving to them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about lead time and cycle time, if you are aware about what's the difference between these two.
Yep. So lead time and cycle time, these are the terms that are used in Kanban framework, and these are not from the Scrum framework. So to be honest, I do not have practical experience of or the practical knowledge of it, but from my experience, what I've learned over the years, I think cycle time is something when we have received some piece of functionality, the time we have received it versus when we have delivered it, the total time, we call it the lead time, and the cycle time is when the developers actually started to work on the functionality till the time they delivered it is the cycle time. And yeah, I think that's the difference. I don't know a lot of details about it because I don't have the technical experience.
Okay. You are aware about Scrum of Scrum, SOS? What is its purpose and why you basically do SOS?
Yeah, so Scrum of Scrums is used in when we are into a scale agile framework and there are multiple Scrum teams working on a single product. In those situations, there are multiple Scrum teams, and this Scrum happens among the Scrum masters, where they talk about their individuals' teamwork and what are the dependencies they have with respect to these teams. So these are the things they talk about during Scrum of Scrum meetings. And I think, again, the duration depends upon team to team and the organization to organization. Generally, it's once a week or twice a week that Scrum of Scrum happens. And it's used in places where the Agile is adopted at enterprise level or a portfolio level.
Okay. And do you aware about spike and technical depth, these two terms?
Yep. So spike and technical depth are again related. First, let me talk about spike. Spike is a user story or an epic for which the developers do not have clear understanding and they are not able to get to an estimate of that. So they dedicate time, maybe a time boxed time in which they are able to do that research work on that functionality. And the result of a spike would be that research work would be they'll be able to get to the estimates that how much time it will take to complete that functionality. That is a spike. And about technical debt, I'd like to explain technical debt as a feature that the developers has developed because of the tight deadlines. They have delivered something with a shortcut or maybe a band-aid fix, but later they want to refactor it so that they can improve the performance of the functionality. So that, I think, is a technical debt where just because of some tight deadlines, they have delivered the functionality, but not the perfect code is something that they have done. Okay. Yeah, and that needs improvement in future sprints. That's why we call it a technical debt.
Okay. And according to you, what is a good user story?
A good user story is something which has a characteristics that it follows invest criteria, that it is independent of other user stories. So it's not dependent upon other user stories. When we are delivering it or working on that user story, we are able to deliver a business value just out of that user story. And it should be negotiable between the product owner and the developer. So if they want to talk about the user story, it should be negotiable between them. It should be valuable, again, able to deliver some value at the end of the day. Estimable, we should be able to estimate it, at least the relative estimation, we should be able to tell it. Small, it should be small enough to be delivered in a sprint, and it should be testable. We should be able to test it before we can say that this is done and the definition of done is met, and we can pass it for the release. So I think these are the characteristics of a good user story from my perspective.
Okay. And let's say your project manager came to you one day and your project manager is telling you that, could you tell us few of the ways to increase the productivity of the team? So how you can do that? How we can increase the productivity of the team if team is not performing well?
How we can improve the productivity of the team? I think what we can do is in the retrospectives, first we can try to identify the problem areas, because only when we know the problem, we are able to identify a solution for that. So what is it that is not working fine? Is it that we are overestimating or underestimating our user stories, or the capacity planning is not done well? People are taking too many leaves during or unplanned leaves during the sprint, or they are adding too many defects into the system. So once we know what is it that is not working, basis that only we can decide that how we can improve on that and improve the productivity of the team.
Okay. Okay, now this one is again one of the most asked question. What's the difference between a burn up and a burn down chart?
Okay, so burn up and burn down chart are some of the metrics that we use in the Scrum framework. A burn down chart is based on a time versus the effort. So on x-axis, we have the time, the number of days we have in a sprint, and on y-axis, we have the story points or the hours. So each day when we are working on the sprint, we will be able to, through the burn down chart, we will be able to figure out that how many stories have been burnt each day. And there is an ideal line in the burn down chart which tells us that this is the expected work that is expected to be completed each day. So each day we are tracking, and as a Scrum Master, I would be tracking that how many stories have been burned, and is it lesser than or more than what is we expected based on the ideal line. And this is a way to basically judge how our team is performing in the sprint, how far or near we are to the sprint goal. Are we able to complete the sprint goal on time? So this is something we use the burn down chart to track daily progress of our sprint. And similarly, a burn up chart is again tells us that this is our total work and each day what we are completing or how many story points we are completing each day. So if in our project we have suppose 200 story points, so each day we are telling that or maybe sprint by sprint we are telling that every sprint we are able to deliver 20 story points if that's the velocity, and then 25 story points. So sprint by sprint we are telling that this much work has been completed. That is something being told to the management in terms of that burn up chart.
Okay, thanks for that, Priyanka. Okay, so now this one is about product backlog and a sprint. So what do you cover in a sprint or a product backlog other than the bugs, issue, or user stories?
So I think as per my understanding, apart from working on user stories and bugs, we work upon spikes and technical deaths during our sprint. I think we have already discussed about what is a spike and what is a technical debt. So if we have capacity into our ongoing sprint, maybe there are situations generally, which is not the case, that we do not have enough user stories refined into our product backlog and we have capacity in the team. In those situations, maybe we can take some spikes or technical debts in the ongoing sprint apart from our regular work like user stories and defects. And please, Sunant, if there's anything else that we are working and I'm not aware of, please feel free to add that.
No, that's okay, Priyanka. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to the other one. This is again a typical scenario-based question, which we have seen many times. So let's say any one of your team member is not interested or not attending any of the sprint event. Let's say it's a daily scrum or it can be anything, planning session or a refinement. It can be anything. So how you work with this kind of team members, Priyanka?
Yeah. So considering an example, there is a team member who is not attending the daily stand-up. I would just talk to the person that what is his reason behind not attending the meeting. And suppose he comes up and say that I'm not attending the meeting because I do not have any impediment. And I would like to use that time in doing my regular work. I would be able to save that time. So in that case, I would help him understand that daily stand-up, it's not just about you, it's about the team. Even if you do not have any impediment, it doesn't tell us that you will not be able to be a part of somebody else's problem. So if the purpose of following a Scrum framework or agile way of working is that we are rising together and we are failing together. So we have taken this ownership together as a team. So when we are meeting in the daily stand-up, it is giving transparency to the entire team. And what is it that we worked yesterday? What is it that we are working today? And what is it that we will be working tomorrow? So yeah, so and what are the problems that we have? So in case you do not have any problem, maybe there's some other member in the team who has problems, and you'll get that opportunity to help that person and outshine yourself. So this is the way I would help him understand the importance of daily Scrum, the framework and the daily Scrum, so that he can feel encouraged to participate in those events. I think coaching and mentoring is the thing that is required here if a person is not attending any of the sessions.
Okay. Thanks, Priyanka, for that. Okay. Now, this one is again very specific with respect to Scrum Master. So what is your biggest failure and a success as a Scrum Master? If you have go back and see your journey so far as a Scrum Master.
My biggest failure and a success. So I think I would not call it a failure, but a challenge is like I was explaining in already in one of the questions, is that changing the mindset when you're working with a team who is transforming from waterfall to agile way of working. So in those teams, it's really difficult to convince them that this is the new way of working and we should start doing it, because there are many advantages of using the framework. Because change is hard, it's tough for people to accept the changes, and working in a framework where there are tight deadlines and we are open and transparent about everything, we are inspecting and adapting at every phases. So this is, I think, is the biggest challenge. And I think with the help of collaboration and explaining him the benefits and how it will benefit the customer as well as to themselves, we will be able to align them to why we should work in this way. But yeah, I think this was a challenge that I faced multiple times when we want to transform a team from waterfall to agile way of working. And success, I would say, as a Scrum Master in my career, I have been able to manage multiple teams. I've been able to work with different team members having different thought process, and I've worked with many teams who have been transformed to agile to waterfall to agile way of working. This has given value to the organization, like they have been able to develop and they have been able to work in agile framework. So this is, I think, a success. And again, working in collaboration with your team when you're working in a virtual world, working with a global team, and the team is still doing well. They are moving towards norming to performing phase. They are facilitating the ceremonies by themselves. They are empowered enough to give their viewpoints. They are courageous. These are some of the things that I use to determine how my team is performing. And I think that's a successful Scrum Master if its team is performing and have been matured enough that even in the absence of a Scrum Master, things are going well.
Priyanka, okay, I think, Priyanka, we are good. We have covered, I think, half of our questions. Okay. And still we have, I think, more than 20-25 questions still left, but I can see on your face you're a little exhausted. So I think it's the right time to take a break. Sure, so we will continue this session after some time. So yeah, thank you so much, Priyanka. And I am really glad that you are here and you have shared all those questions, and the way you have answered is good, so that's really awesome. And I'm sure like whoever is going to watch this session, they will definitely learn a lot of new things, new ideas, examples which you have shared with all of us. That's really good. So this session has come out really well. So thanks a lot, Priyanka, for your time and efforts, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you, Sunant, and thank you so much for your time, and you're doing a great job with these sessions. It is helping a lot of people. So thank you again so much for for the hard work
Thanks.
or the contribution.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you. Have a good day.